Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the SDG Media Zone today from Beirut, focusing on SDG 16 along the sidelines of the high-level political forum. Today's conversation will focus on crisis in Lebanon. Lebanon is never far away from the international headlines, most of the time for the wrong reasons. We have with us Special Coordinator for Lebanon, Ms. Joanna, Wronecka, and Mr. Saroj. Welcome to both of you. Ms. Wronecka, how do you describe the crisis that Lebanon is going through at the moment?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me for this panel discussion. In fact, it is hard to see Lebanon, a country with so much potential, facing such a serious socio-economic and also financial crisis. I think the Lebanese people are affected and vulnerable during this crisis. But at the same time, the commitment and the engagement of the United Nations, but also the whole international community is there, is strong. And coordinated efforts are underway in order to find the best support to the Lebanese people during this period. Allow me to name only few initiatives. Probably you remember that in 2013, International Support Group for Lebanon was established to maintain stability, sovereignty, and socio-economic development of Lebanon. We also work very hard with the emergency response plans in close cooperation with the World Bank, European Union, and the UN. Recently, France, in cooperation with the United Nations, organized a conference to extend emergency support to Lebanese army. But a lot of international assistance and ability to make a positive change depends on Lebanon itself. When you have friends, opportunities should be not wasted. And I think the immediate action is needed. I see three sectors of immediate action. Structural reforms have become critical on this point, and here we always repeat our message that the new government should be formed. But putting the people of Lebanon first, I think it's a top priority. So the Lebanon's authorities should take care of the people, vulnerable people, elder people, displaced people, but the young people as well. And I will put here as a top priority the education for the children. Inclusion is essential. When we speak about inclusion, is the participation of all actors of the society. The government, of course, the civil society, different organizations, because it's about planning a new vision for Lebanon. What I notice, I am here for only a few weeks, that Lebanese are extremely talented. So what we need, maybe we should use these talents for the greater public good. And when we agree on three criteria or three sectors, we can speak about the sectors for the future where Lebanon can generate growth. This required maybe innovative approach, maybe a new culture of accountability to break different old mechanism, and this could be a good start, and this would bring hope for Lebanon.
Thank you for that. Mr. Jah, a few weeks ago, the World Bank in a report described the financial and economic crisis in Lebanon as potentially one of the worst three crises over the past 150 years. How did the World Bank arrive at that conclusion? And what's really the nature or characteristic of Lebanon's economic and financial crisis?
Thank you very much for having me as part of this very important conversation on Lebanon. And I want to begin by saying that World Bank Group has been a long-standing partner of the Lebanese people, and we'll always stand with the Lebanese people in good times and bad times. With regard to the recent report of the World Bank, we have to put that in perspective. World Bank has a program for economic monitoring in all the countries where we are based. And we have regular reports on the country's macro financial situation, on the social and economic issues the country is facing. So we come out with these reports based on our own analysis that we carry out inside the institution. Now, I want to preface the description of this crisis by saying that Lebanon is indeed facing multiple crises, not one. You had an economic and financial crisis, but you also then had the COVID-19 impact in the country and the port of Beirut explosion disaster. So you have multiple crises facing the country. But the reason why Lebanon is likely to be in the top 3, if not in the top 10, as the worst economic and financial crisis is because of lack of any policy action whatsoever by those who are responsible for taking the policy action. So crisis does impact many countries, but if there is adequate response to the crisis in terms of mitigation, prevention, preparedness, and taking the economy forward on the recovery path, you can face these challenges, especially the challenges that are exogenous. Now, in terms of the definition of the crisis, there are 3 broad elements that we have looked at in our report. First is the economic and financial crisis. This particular report uses what is called Crisis Severity Index. We essentially measure the situations in countries around the world and see, based on the macroeconomic performance of the country over the years and our outlook, to see how does this country compare with other countries which have faced similar crises in the past. And we came to the conclusion that it is definitely in the top 10 worst economic and financial crises of the world, but it is quite possible that it will be in the top 3. We have to see this report also in the perspective that more than 7 months ago, we had said Lebanon is in deliberate depression. The situation in Lebanon is purely self-inflicted, it is man-made. Now there has been no response pretty much since then. And as a result, you will continue to see Lebanon sinking on all these parameters which I just described. But let me add 2 more dimensions why we think Lebanon is in a very serious situation right now. Is the human dimension and the social dimension. The human dimension, if you look at the performance of the Lebanese children who are participating in the international assessment tests, Lebanese kids are not doing well at all. They are very much at the bottom of the Arab region now, compared to a time when Lebanon used to be on the top. This is a very serious, what we call learning crisis. In my view, this crisis is the mother of all crises because this is going to impact Lebanon's future generation. And therefore, we are very concerned about deteriorating education quality in our schools, in our educational institutions in the country. And we do talk about that in that report as well. And lastly, the social situation. There is extreme levels of poverty, unemployment, deprivation in the country. Something which is unprecedented. Lebanon has never seen this level of deprivation, distress, and poverty. And the social dimension of this crisis to us seems a huge paradox in a country which has tremendous human potential, tremendous talent, very enterprising people, but sheer lack of governance, prevalence of corruption in every sector of the economy has brought us to a point where we describe Lebanon to be in the top 3 countries in terms of the economic and financial crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a rough 2 years probably for Lebanon, starting with, as the financial crisis started to loom, then we had the uprising, people took to the streets. There was some hope of really some change in Lebanon. And then, unfortunately, that was followed by the Beirut blast and all the damage and the losses in life and material. that really saw it. Now, some people who lived through the Civil War would say, you know, today it's probably worse. Others would say, no, the Civil War was worse. But I think the most significant thing now is more and more. I've lived through the Civil War in Lebanon, but I think I've never seen people in Lebanon losing hope of the future. I think that's, you know, what keeps me up at night is basically, you know, what kind of future my kids are going to have here. During the Civil War, there seemed to be some hope in the future, or some trust that the future would be better. But now I think the Lebanese are starting to lose that hope. Ms. Wronecka, on the political front, what do you think needs to happen for things to be to start moving again? I mean, next May, Lebanon has general elections scheduled, supposedly. Do you see the way forward politically is by holding elections and renewing, or you know, giving the chance for the people to have their say? And if elections happen, some here say not much will change. So how much is next year's elections, crucial to happen on time and to be fair and transparent?
Yes, thank you for this question. In the democratic systems, the elections are perceived as a more effective way, first of all, for the citizens to participate in the political life, but also to achieve change. So the UN, with the expertise of the UNDP, can help, of course, Lebanon to organize transparent and free elections. And in my discussions, of course, I always mention the fact that the elections should take place on time. Next year, we are expecting to have municipal, parliamentary, and presidential elections in Lebanon. What is important for us to see also the participation of women and young people. The elections, we perceive the election as a choice, but also for the people, it's an opportunity to hold their elected representatives accountable. So we encourage, yes, the organization of the elections. And again, this can bring hope, but the Lebanese themselves should take part in the elections.
Thank you, Mr. Jah. We hear a lot from the international community, and also especially from the World Bank and IMF, calls for reforms in Lebanon. What sort of reforms does the World Bank look for in order to be able to help Lebanon? I mean, I think, you know, the problem is the Lebanese first need to help themselves to really expect and ask for help. But what specific reforms you'd be looking at to say, now the Lebanese are starting to get their house in order? What would you like to see happen in the near future?
So thank you very much, and for this very important question. And I will be straight to the point and very simple. You need only one reform, electricity reform. Only one. And we need to do it right. It is about governance, electricity sector. It is about bringing private investments in generation. It is about bringing private sector for distribution. It is about bringing private sector for collection of tariff. Let us just agree. Electricity, electricity, electricity. You see, Lebanon's fiscal problem today is because of electricity sector. A large part of your debt is coming from electricity sector. If you continue to subsidize EBL with $2 billion on an average every year, that money that you don't have, this is where the real issues is. So let's take one sector, fix it. This is going to help with the fiscal issues, with the competitiveness issues, attracting new investments. And there are ways to do it. You can go big time on solar, wind. You can go big on renewable energy. You can clean up the sector, focus on governance, an independent regulator. much more commercially viable utility, the EDL, and bring more private sector into generation, distribution, and transmission. This is all doable. Lebanese themselves have produced these reform papers many times in the last so many years. World Bank has done its part for the last 15 years. I'm picking one sector because that sector has the greatest multiplier effect in terms of addressing the fiscal deficit, addressing the total debt of the sovereign, and helping create jobs in the economy by attracting new investment. I do not want to give you a long list of reforms because it'll be unfair to expect all those reforms to be implemented. Then, if everything is important, nothing is important. So my message to you and everyone watching this is that let's agree as a national dialogue, all political blocs, all stakeholders, let's work for next 12 months on electricity sector and fix it. We can look at other issues later, and we will be more than happy to provide whatever support is required to make that happen. We've said this so many times, but we got to address this immediately. It is extremely, extremely important. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wronecka, I mean, do you think that the political system in Lebanon is outdated or has proven to be a failure? I mean, many Lebanese believe that our political system really cannot work anymore. Can you see at a stage of maybe international help for the Lebanese to sit around the table and to have a dialogue and to discuss their political system and see whether there need to be any changes? Or do you think elections are really where things should be changed or determined?
I already mentioned that the elections are the most appropriate democratic way of organizing the political life, of course, with the involvement and participation of the whole citizens. I mentioned that we are ready to help for the preparation of the elections, but also organizing dialogues with different groups, parties, of course. Here in Lebanon. The initiative, I will repeat, should come from the Lebanese because it's about the prosperity of the country, and it's also about the ownership. When the people feel that there is ownership, inclusion, as I mentioned, so this will bring a real permanent change. But Lebanon is also an important member of the UN, and the aspect of the sustainability. So the vision for the future should be in according with, because we started our discussion with that in accordance with the Agenda 2030 about different goals and the sustainable dimension. And it's about the aspirations. I mentioned the issue of the people. The people should feel that their dignity is respected, that they have their voice, and can make really the change, delivery, and acting. I think are the main messages today.
Thank you very much, Mr. George. Just quickly, what kind of projects are now the World Bank working on with the Lebanese authorities? Are you doing anything helping with the social crisis that Lebanon is going on? What are the immediate projects that the World Bank is working on to help Lebanon?
Now we have, as I said, we've been here for a long time. We work in very important sectors, but in particularly with respect to the crisis that Lebanon is facing, we have 4 broad interventions. First, in the health sector, to help Lebanon decisively respond to the COVID-19 crisis and get the vaccination coverage for everyone in Lebanon, the Lebanese and the non-Lebanese. And we are very proud of this partnership we have with the government here, with the Ministry of Health and all the public health institutions. And I think Lebanon has done a pretty good job so far in ensuring a good vaccination campaign. So that's our very large Lebanon Health Resilience Program, and we will continue supporting strengthening of the health sector in the country. The second is education sector. This is about improving more the quality of education and preparing Lebanese kids for future of work, because the move towards more knowledge-based jobs to be created in the future is very important. Our education system is aligned with the future of jobs. So we have a very large program in the education sector. The third is supporting small businesses, startups, small businesses, and this is now also being scaled up for small businesses recovery program following the Port of Beirut explosion. And the last program, which is our priority at this time, is the Emergency Social Safety Net project. It's a $246 million program to provide cash transfer to extremely poor households. And these extremely poor households will receive US dollars cash transfers on a monthly basis. We are doing some preparatory work with the government to launch the program immediately. If this program goes well, and the World Bank is satisfied with the implementation of this program, the World Bank is ready to deploy more financial resources for scaling up the social safety net program. So these are our four important interventions where we are providing technical and financial support, and we will remain engaged in these sectors given the scale of the crisis in Lebanon. Thank you.